Regret minimization. I wonder if we're going to have a low turnout today because it's a kind of bizarre topic. But regret minimization is best described as the rocking chair test. And, what are you going to think about later on in your life and have regrets on what you did or did not do? And I learned this from some little known person called Jeff Bezos. Anybody ever heard of him?
Yeah.
Does anybody know what Jeff Bezos did before he started his company?
A book company.
No, he wasn't. You know what he was before he started? No, before he started Amazon to sell books.
I know he started in his garage. But
So Jeff Bezos was a stockbroker, a Wall Street banker, making really good money. And he put this test together called the rocking chair test or the regret minimization test when he was in the prime of his career doing stocks and bonds, making millions of dollars. He told his superior, hey, I'm going to start this crazy business selling books online. And the gentleman told him, why don't you take a day or two to think about it before you make this crazy move? Because if you leave now, you're not going to get your bonus and you're leaving a really great job. And he thought about it and he said, you know what? I would have tremendous regret if I didn't make this change and start this company. And if it fails, I can live with it. But if I've never done it, that's going to be the bigger regret. And there's this whole theory about regret minimization. And I've connected it to a part of my life. And when I saw some people who had severe regret in what they didn't do in their careers. So that's the impetus for this session. And I'm going to just get my document open here. For those of you who are open to it, tomorrow from 10 to 1, I'm going to do a call session here in Westfield. If you have Zillow, Lead Your Own Company, KV Core, First App, anything, please feel free to come in. And I'll be down in Florida next week, so we'll probably do something when I'm down there as well. Where did I lose part of my document? Let's see. And when I'm just gonna kind of tease you a little bit with Jeff Bezos' principle when he started the business, and it's very similar to a lot of customer service businesses. And he attributes his success not to his financial prowess, not solely to his vision, but he said that they had a obsessive customer focus that changed the paradigm. Doesn't that sound like something that would be relevant in our business as well?
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. Customer service is priority number one.
Right. And I think a lot of these people that make it to this tremendous success level do it because they look at the customer first, and then the money comes, instead of the other way around. And it's really interesting. Jeff Bezos also framed it into a perspective of, hey, when I'm 80 sitting in a rocking chair, what are the things that I'm going to most regret having done or not done? And he came to the conclusion that he would have more regret for the things that he didn't do than some of the mistakes that he made. And I just feel like right now, the market's going to be turning. Okay. If we don't get everything in alignment, we're going to be wasting time setting up systems when the market is on fire, when the market is robust. And that's the regret minimization that, I want to talk about here today. there was a sign, I don't know exactly if this is correct, but I remember some of the experienced agents, and this was in the early 90s, 91, I was poking around a pretty productive office in Princeton, and they kept talking about the 80s. And they said, God, if there was only another real estate boom, I swear I won't blow it this time. And a few people even had these little kind of novelty signs made up and put on their door or on their desk. Does anybody remember like those markets? Not many of us have been in the business that long. Colleen, were you in real estate back then? Colleen's on mute. But
yes, I was, and yes, I do remember.
right. I mean, everybody's like, please give me one more good market. I promise I won't blow it. Now let me ask you the magical question. What happened when the market recovered for those agents?
They did the same thing they did before. They blew it.
They blew it again.
Yes.
Right. So I want to, for the fraction of people that are really going to internalize this, to make a change, realize that this is an opportunity for us to get prepared for the market that's going to be coming. Okay. I'm seeing a tremendous pickup in activity. I'm seeing the rates start to drop. I'm thinking that we were the first domino to fall in the market correction, right? Because they had to curtail interest rates, and that put a direct impact on our market. But I think things happen for reasons, and I think the higher interest rates are going to be a good part of our communication. Because if the rates hadn't gone up to, I've seen loans closing in the high 7s. Has anybody seen anything close in the 8s? And for residents,
a while back.
you've seen a while back, you saw stuff close in the 8% range.
Yeah, closing in the 8s. Yeah, if the credit wasn't that great, or the rates were at that point.
So now, is it now a better story when the rates go back into the 5s? And are they in the 5s yet or no?
Not necessarily. They're like kind of, when I looked this morning, the average around 6.4. FHA, it's a bit lower, but the numbers have to make sense as far as with the PMI and stuff like that on the FHA. But
is that 6.4 with 0 points?
Yeah.
Thank you.
The thing is, though, once we start getting now down into the 6 range and even the high 5s, we're going to start probably seeing a refi boom. All those people that went and they bought in the 7s and even in the 8s and even in the higher 6s. When I was actually out at UWM in Michigan last fall, that's what the CEO actually was saying when he was on stage. He said, right now we're setting up the next refi boom. So everybody that's buying at these higher rates, as soon as the rates come down, refi boom, and then they drop down a little further, refi boom. So it's kind of it's all cyclical, it's all cycle, really.
I was, before you came on, Rob, I had mentioned the National Association of Realtors. You're right on target. Said that February was the first large increase they've seen in real estate sales in 13 months. So we're headed for the positive. Absolutely.
I was actually did some limited door knocking before an open house last Saturday, and they did open house Saturday and Sunday, and the place went for $75,000 over ask price. So the market is still pretty resilient, pretty short on inventory. And, we're poised for a recovery, but the question is, are you ready to take advantage? And when I say take advantage, I don't mean take advantage of people. I mean, take advantage of the market and, grow your business during this period. We had an office meeting. I don't know if Marilyn is on. Marilyn, welcome to the leadership team. And
thank you.
Yep, and we talked a little bit about the market and what we were seeing, and we're going to see improvements. We are literally and figuratively coming out of the winter of the real estate market, both the winter season and the winter dark part of our business cycle. Okay, there's probably some pent up demand from people who put off moving because the rates were higher. Would you guys agree with that?
Absolutely.
Any of the agents there in Florida think clients might have put things on hold because it was just too much to go from 3 to 7? Right? Now, if it goes from 3 to 5.5, don't they feel like they got a deal? Or 3 to 5 7/8? At least they feel like they've escaped the worst of it. And what happens if your clients buy at 5 7/8 and rates go down?
They can
Refinance.
refinance.
Yeah, they refinance.
Yep. And what happens if rates go down to 5 7/8 and then they go back up to 7? They feel pretty smart, right?
They're locked
Absolutely.
in.
And there's also a large segment, and I think a large segment of the buyers are first-time buyers that have been kind of squeezed out of the market. And to them, they never had a 3% rate. The only challenge that we're facing with them is trying to find the inventory to sell them. Does that make sense? Yay, nay?
And win a bid at those price points. There's 20 to 30 bids for every house that's on the market.
And how does that, like, what does that make you feel like, Mickey, when you have that competition?
Nervous. I've just lost 3 in a row because of that.
And how do you, I don't know if you mind just sharing, Mickey, but how do you address the elephant in the room when there's a property where there's more than 10 offers on it?
You mean, how do I address it with the client or?
Yeah, how do you have that conversation with your client?
Well, I always explain in the beginning that it's a tough market and that we're gonna have to go over asking. And we do go over asking. We just didn't go over asking enough to have made a difference. And I explained that, it's a tough market. Next time we'll have to try to be a little better. Offer more depending on what the house is. The problem is a lot of these homes, when you look at comps, it's way above comp prices that, like I just had one that I lost the other day, and it was a 410 house, says 3 bedrooms, but it really only had 2 because the other one was smaller than a closet with no closet in it. And we bid on a 410, we bid 430. I didn't even think 430 was probably a good price because everything had to be redone. And it went significantly over 430. So
Yes, like Bruce or Peter, are you seeing any appraisal issues on the lending side?
Are we seeing any appraisal issues? You mean under appraisers? Under appraisals?
Yeah, like if a property is at 500 and it comes in at 580, are you seeing them under appraised?
We're not, actually, we had 4 property inspection waivers this week. So we're seeing a lot of the areas that have a lot of digital data where there's units that we're not even needing appraisals, but we've had a few under appraisals, but no more than, we haven't seen it become an issue yet, if that's where you're going. We haven't seen that happen yet, at least not on our end.
And are you able to work through most of those or no? The under
Yeah,
appraisal.
so far. In fact, we had one I couldn't even believe we worked through. When the agents that didn't fall, she kept that together. I couldn't believe it. Every possible crazy ass thing happened and she kept it all together. It was crazy. Yeah, we've been able to get through all of them.
So Bruce, if the client's not able to come up with the funds to pay for the difference, how else can you get around that?
Well, I mean, negotiation, obviously, the seller and the client would have to come together, or somebody's got to be able to give or have the liquidity to change that. I mean, there's no silver bullet, but what I mean by being able to get around it is a lot of times if there's an underappraisal, Mick, you're going to be able to present the data, and, appraisers are going to do everything they can to hit the numbers for us, especially our panel appraisers, because we've known them for years. So usually there's a reason, and usually the reason is that it's really can't be documented on paper. And I've had some transactions where agents have said to me, yeah, I was surprised. I didn't even think it would come in at that. So the underappraisals are usually, something where you can go back and there's ammunition to be able to maybe, negotiate, or some buyers will just say, I don't care. And if they have liquidity, they do it anyway. But there's no silver bullet to make it go away.
I gave a class on this a couple of weeks ago. When something under appraises, if it's like under $5,000 or $7,000, somewhere around there, it's workable with everybody giving in. Title company, mortgage company, buyer, seller. Sometimes the agents have to give a little bit to make the deal happen.
Where there is one other
It's
piece
one-
though, Mickey, to keep in mind that's really important. And I just want to mention this to all the agents. If you have a transaction where somebody's putting the absolute minimum down, like, 3.5 or 3% down, and the house under appraises, that's a different challenge than if you have somebody that's putting more than the minimum down. Because if somebody's putting 10% down and the house under appraises a little bit, the program only requires a minimum of 5% down, which means you have a 5% room to play a little bit. Yeah, their PMI might change. Yeah, some things like that could happen, but you still have the ability to find liquidity if you're not putting the minimum amount down. If you're putting the minimum amount down, that becomes a much harder thing to figure out. I hope you guys know what I mean by that. So
Yes, I do. And
cool. Yeah, 'cause it
totally
makes a
understand
difference.
that.
Okay, good.
And one thing to remember is, Mickey, when we're doing this every day, right? The process of buying is unique for our clients. And I'm going to say, when I bought my first house, like, it was frightening. I stretched and felt uncomfortable and felt like I went to the absolute maximum. And then 2 years later, I was like, wow, that was the best decision ever, right? Has anybody else ever felt like that when you bought your first house, and you want to just share that? Because I think that's important in the way that we talk to our clients, that we don't have a bias into, hey, this is crazy, you're paying too much. Because everybody kind of, when they start with their first house, I shouldn't say everybody, but almost everybody kind of goes to that point where they're uncomfortable and maybe even had a sleepless night when they put the contract in. Anybody want to volunteer that personal experience? Because I think that's relevant to the way that we treat our clients. And if we take that back to having an obsessive customer focus, that is our true north to get through these challenges and to win more times than we lose. And before I go into that, I'm going to say, if I was up against 10 offers, okay, I would think I'd have an advantage over the other 9. Like, if you're a bet, I'd say bet on Rob as opposed to the other 9 offers. That's my mindset, because I believe, like, we can share with people what the reality of the situation is, and that we're not selling them out to just pay the highest possible price. So anybody want to volunteer, like, a personal experience when you bought a house and maybe you lost sleep the night when you went under contract?
I have the reverse. First house I bought, we had an opportunity to buy another house that was slightly more expensive. And we chose to buy the one that was less expensive. This is what 40 years later, and I'm still kicking myself because the one I didn't buy went up 200,000 when mine went up 75,000. So that's the reverse story, but true.
Okay, so anybody else have a story where you went over your skis and got uncomfortable?
So Rob, my first home that I bought with my wife was it was back in 1980 or 81, I forget exactly, and it was $63,000, but the mortgage rate was 18.75%, and far more than we were prepared to pay, but we were desperate for a place to live. We were currently living with my parents, and it was getting a little tenuous. So we paid it, we went for it, and we were very nervous about it. It was out right on a railroad track, but that's how desperate we were. But in the 5 years that we lived there, we were able to refinance twice to bring the price down, our monthly carry charge down dramatically. And when we were ready to sell, that $63,000 was now $125,000. So that we walked away from it feeling pretty good about it.
I think there's a lot of stories that are exactly like that. And, you know, we lose sight of that experience when we're just in this race to try to get an offer accepted. You know, Mickey, do you think that sometimes we might even exaggerate in our mind how many other offers there are on a house? Mickey, if you can unmute yourself. But I believe that a lot of times there might be one or two occasions when there's 30 or 40 offers, but maybe the other occasions are maybe 8 to 12, but we're telling ourselves a story, a disempowering story, because, you know, we want to have justification for maybe why we weren't successful in winning that opportunity. Mickey? No?
Offers and everything. I think a lot of it is to the relationship you have with the other realtor, the listing agent. If you set up a good amount of rapport ahead of time with them to find out, and I think you covered this like last week or the week before, I think that makes a big difference. Also, if you have the lender reach out to the listing agent to, you know, talk to them about how qualified the buyer is. I've also been including just a copy of the DU findings from the desktop underwriting showing approved eligible, showing that I did run everything to kind of just solidify everything. It's not going to fix everything as far as, you know, if they're not the highest bidder, but it would, if it's neck and neck and, you know, the other agent isn't supplying all that, most likely they're going to take your offer.
Got you. So sometimes we, in our head, have expectations that are not helping, you know, helping our clients to be where they want to be. And by no means am I saying to you, you know, if I can go back in time to push Colleen to buy something that she wasn't comfortable, but more times than not, I think the regret in that circumstance is, you know, could I have gotten it for 5,000 more? Or did anybody recently have a client when they see that what the property closed for and say, wow, it was only 6,000 more than I was offering? I wish I would have known that. Nobody, huh? Or maybe it hurts too much. But I know I've seen ones where people come back to our agents and, you know, hey, you know, Bill, how come you didn't tell me? You know, I can't believe I was only $2,000 away from winning that. Jay, that ever happened with you?
Oh, shit.
That happens all the time. You know, the people will do that. And I said, well, it's called highest and best for a reason, right? What's the highest we'll pay? I try to explain to them, and it's not worth it to lose a house for 2 to 4 to 5 to 10,000. It's just not worth it, especially in this market. I mean,
so would you regret not offering 555 if you lost it because you kept that 549? And that was able to help you get it, right? Because I think people are focused on, hey, I'm paying $6,000 more. I want to play this game, right? I want to try to get it for the lowest possible, not for what I would feel comfortable if I lost it for $1 more, right? Does anybody have a good script for how you can tell somebody on how to determine what their value of a property is?
Hey, Rob,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, before putting in an offer, I always ask the client, well, obviously when it's best and final, I always ask my client if they lost the house for, let's say, 5 to 10,000 more, if they found out that the property closed at 5 or 10,000 more than their offer, would they be okay with that?
Must be a really interesting conversation, right?
I mean, people will say, they'll give me like their bottom, their highest that they're willing to go. And then that's kind of where we gauge the offer to go.
All right, here's an interesting way of approaching it. And I'm kind of formulating this idea when I'm hearing what you're saying collectively. And anybody ever use an escalation clause, right? The escalation clause might say that that house that is on the market for 500 that I was willing to make an offer of 551 on, right? If I knew it was going to go for 579, I would pay 580, right? This is the mindset. We all understand that? Now, if we were able to have conversations, even if we know it's unlikely they're going to accept an escalation clause, and we say, you know, Shantae, this house is listed for 500. You know, we're contemplating coming in at 551. Let me ask you this question, Shantae. If you knew what the offers were, what would be the point where you would make $1,000 more to win that house? Right? If we were able to, if I was able to get the agent to tell me exactly what the offers were, and we had an opportunity to bid 1,000 more, and this is quite frankly the principle why a lot of people go to the listing agent, right? Do you ever see people go to the listing agent because they think they're going to tell them, hey, here's the best offer. If you come in 2,000 more and get yours accepted?
Yes, many times.
Right. So a lot of consumers have that mindset because they think that we're going to cheat and we're going to give them that information. But this whole concept of an escalation clause, even if it's not accepted, will really give us a barometer of where they're comfortable buying. So if in this made up example, Shantae, the house is at 500 and you were to probe them and say, hey, if you knew somebody made an offer of 575, would you offer 576? If there was an offer on the table of 580, would you offer 581? You'd eventually get to a point where they would say, if I knew there was an offer of this, I would pay up to this point. And if it goes beyond there, I'm out. Right? Everybody would have a breaking point, correct? And everybody would have that breaking point would be their regret point. So
And that's what I usually say about that is that offer the max you're willing to pay and with no regrets, that if you didn't get the house and it was 1,000 more, you just wouldn't have paid even 1,000 more. This is your max.
So Mickey, I think it's a little bit different because I think a lot of us talk about what's the max that you would pay, but I think consumers who don't buy houses 22 times a year or 40 times a year like you transact, Mickey, are they're kind of frozen when you say what's the max you're going to pay. And you know, do you think, Mickey, that anybody that's buying a house, what was the price of the last house that you lost, Mickey?
The list price was 410.
So let me ask you, and what did they offer?
430.
Now, do you think that your buyer has any context whatsoever of what $43,100 bills look like, or whatever that number is, to come up to $430,000? If you stacked up $100 bills, they have no context of what that is. This is all just a number, right? It has no real meaning. I mean, if they can put down enough money to qualify, it's basically a down payment and a monthly payment, correct?
Yes.
Where that number lands is just a hypothetical. It's an emotional feel and where they're going to go. Would you agree with me on that?
Yes, I would.
So my shift here, Mickey, is if we were to go to somebody and say to them, hey, Mickey, if I knew what all the offers were and we could put in an escalation clause, and the escalation clause discussion is perfect for defining where their maximum price would be, right? So if they said, if I knew there was an offer of 580, would you offer 581? They say yes, then their highest and best offer should be what?
581.
Right, but do we think most people are doing that? Probably not. They're trying to figure out how to game the system and get a little bit of a better deal, right? And I don't blame them for it, but I think that's what they're doing. Would you agree, Mickey?
Yeah, of course, everybody always wants a deal and wants to get below the price. I guess the biggest problem, I think, in today's market, what I'm finding is that the homes, like in situation with this home, at 410, when I looked at what sold, and this is Richfield Park, what sold in Richfield Park, there were homes and in 22, 6 months ago or less, sold for 350. They were in the same condition because this home had to be gutted. Everything had to be done to it. So truthfully, I didn't think that they should go more than that. Like I would have pushed for more if I thought that I really, because it's only 2 bedrooms as opposed to 3. So I really thought it was a limited market of people that would really bid on that house. And I thought that they would go under. A lot of those similar homes went below asking. And this home went way above. And I think the trend right now in the last couple of months has been back to that 50, 60, 80,000. You just said somebody offered 75 over asking.
I believe she's right. I have a new listing in Hackensack, and it just went on the market for 360, and it's going to be north of 400 for sure.
So in a normal market where there's balance, right? Do you feel as a buyer's agent that your negotiation skills are a little bit more effective in getting a deal for somebody, right? In a balanced market where there's, I think Robert Carver, is it 6 months inventory for a balanced market? Is that what they say?
5 months.
5 months makes a balanced market?
No, it's according to Jeff Otto, it's 7 months.
Okay, so 7 months. So when there's 7 months of inventory, I think our skills of trying to get a deal are more significant, right? But when there's less than 2.5 months inventory in most markets, I think the focus needs to be on getting not a good deal, it's getting a deal, right?
I'm
To
sorry,
get
Rob.
something done.
I was told it was 6 months. Can we just clarify that to figure out what?
Maurice, it's 6 or 7. It's not that material. 6, 7 months, very close. But when you have 2 or 3 months, it's advantage seller, correct?
Yep.
And I actually believe that, and I know, Robert, you're a big consumer of the auto report, right? But I think that when they look at that, there's only like 2 months worth of inventory right now. I think that's probably even understated, because if you're to look at all the people that could buy, we could probably buy through all the inventory 4 times if there were the right houses on the market, right? Would you agree with me on that, Robert?
Yes.
So I think that we might even have like almost akin to a negative inventory, because the stuff doesn't stay on the shelves if it's priced right. I mean, when you bring a home on the market, Robert, how long before you do a highest and best? In if I'm the seller, what's the expectation that you're setting?
So my feeling is that if the action is very quick and very rapid with a lot of showings, then I'm looking to do highest and best inside of just a few days. Generally speaking, you know, the first 10 days that a house is on the market is when you're going to get the most amount of activity. And after that, it really kind of peters out. So I'm looking to get it done quickly, because that's when the frenzy is really the strongest.
Rob, wouldn't you say that the price of the house is really relative to the monthly payment? If they're looking to buy a house, and I would need the mortgage people's help on this, and they're going to pay, like they made an offer of $550, and we felt it was going to go probably closer to $580. Wouldn't it be astute of us to know what the difference in the payment would be? Like if they're going to spend $100 more a month, maybe they don't go out to dinner a couple of times.
They always should know the difference in incremental payments. It's about $63 for every 10 grand. And in addition to that, what also should be explained to them. And again, this is just, you know, unfortunately, you guys don't always have the opportunity to do this, but if clients are really cool and they spend the right amount of time with us, you know, there's also a normal increase in income too, even just on a national average of 2 or 3%. What feels more this year is going to feel like nothing next year. And that conversation needs to be had. A lot of people don't understand the benefits of the tax implications and things of that nature, but you know, some people are really interested in that, some aren't, but absolutely knowing that every $10,000 that somebody buys right now, every 10 grand is about $63 to $65 a month. Everybody should know that, which also means if your taxes are $65 more a month, you lose 10 grand. Same
You
thing.
gotta be able to qualify for that extra 30, 40 grand. So if they're at their peak at 550 and you have to sell it to them for 580, then the mortgage.
Well, that's totally
has to
different. You're right. No, of
Yeah.
course. I mean, assuming qualifications.
Yeah, so Ron, I think for the newer agents, like in this market, if somebody's looking at areas where you're seeing, 8 to 15, 20% above asking price, you need to just throttle back what you're showing them, right? Because if they can only
Yeah.
afford 550 and you're showing them a 500 that's going to go for 580, what you're doing is, you're breaking their heart slowly. And I think people will want to work with somebody who has the courage to be honest and say, hey, I've done some research, Ron. I hope you don't mind. These homes are selling for 10 to 12, 14% above asking price. We probably shouldn't look at anything higher than 480 if your max is 550. And sometimes, I was here the other day and, somebody, it might even been yesterday, somebody told me I should write a book. And I think my book would be titled, the real estate industry is broken, like from the brokerage side, because what we've been taught traditionally is like top down. It's not consumer focused. And what I mean by that is like, we're giving for example, a listing, we're trained to go out there and say, here's the price I recommend you putting it on the market at. And it's a solo price. You're not giving the consumer any choices. And usually the customer has a overinflated opinion of what their home is worth. And this plays out like time and time and time again. And usually it's a bad strategy, even in a good market, to overprice a listing, right? And the same can be true about the buyer experience. What we're doing sometimes is we're over aggressively telling them about the tax benefit instead of asking them questions so that they can kind of come to that conclusion. I don't know if that makes any sense. Now, Rob Durso, it looked like you wanted to talk for a moment.
No, I'm good. I might have done that by mistake. I apologize.
No worries. So if you were to, look at somebody who bought a house like Colleen, or who bought below what they were comfortable with and regret it not stretching a little bit, that might be on us. Go ahead, Maria, you have a question?
More of a comment. It's not just the buyer's fault, Rob. Ed and I, when we were buying here in Ocean Township, we wanted Wayside. We had a great agent. She showed us, a couple of different homes, and where we are now, but we had the opportunity of buying a little bit bigger of a house with a, bigger property, setback, a couple of streets. I lovingly call my area the slums of Wayside, which is silly. But anyway, this agent failed to tell us that for the extra $30,000 that we would have been paying, Bruce, you chime in. What was it? 8% back in 1999, something like that. How much would the 30,000 be different in mortgage payment?
About $220 a month.
You know what? For us back then, that would have been fine. We thought, oh my God, $30,000 more. I can't do that. I, as a realtor, would say, hey, Rom, look, you know what? The 30,000 is only going to cost you X amount more a month. Can you afford that?
How much is that house worth more now? If you would have spent the
About
30,000,
about $100,000.
so you would have almost a 3.5 time return,
Mhm.
and you would have been living in something that you would have been a little bit more comfortable in for a couple $100
Right.
bucks.
A little bit bigger, a little bit more privacy. We wouldn't have been on a busy street. So again, it's not just the buyer that's saying, oh, I can't do this, I can't do this. It's up to us as professionals to say, hey, Rob, you know what? You're only going up. Everything is relative in life. So whatever your price point is, if you're going up 50,000, well, let's see what it's going to cost you in mortgage. Are you comfortable paying, that X amount every month?
Yeah, I think it's important in your market to understand your increase in income. In New Jersey, last year. The average increase in income was 4.6%, and down in Florida, it was 10.8%. That does matter. We used to have that conversation years back. Rob, you remember in Northwest, so we used to have a conversation years back. And it is something to consider because people can be shook up a little bit for the first year, but they'll settle into it if incomes are increasing. And right now, it's a true narrative that incomes are increasing nationally in all these different markets.
Absolutely. So I had an agent that, you know, she was probably, oh, let me just make this sale. Let me just make this sale. But she didn't take the time out to say, hey, guys, this house really fits what you wanted. Yeah, it's $30,000. Let's talk to your mortgage lender. Let's see how much it would cost extra every month. And we would have gladly, I mean, for $200 a month, we would have said, okay, you know what, we might just, you know, not do a couple of things during the year, but we certainly would have benefited more for, you know, for it.
So Maria, this context has now created a dual meaning. Because like what my belief was when I had this regret minimization concept, and I know it's a crazy title, was let's not blow this opportunity to be totally prepared, both from a marketing perspective and from a professional perspective, to guide people through the process. Okay. And if you don't feel personally that if you're up against 10 offers, if you don't feel that you have an advantage against 10, then I want to rethink about how you approach that process, right? Because when you get offers, I've covered for agents that have been sick on vacation, multiple bid situations. I would say a third to maybe 60% of the offers that come in are not even workable. Okay, which means that they're incoherent. The people don't even add the numbers correctly. They're just not well represented in the transaction. Would anybody want to agree or disagree with that when you see buyer offers coming in on your listings?
100%.
So a third to almost 2/3 are like not even real offers. They're kind of discounted because they don't make any sense. You call the agent, you want to ask them a question about their buyer, they never answer the phone. Are you going to do a transaction with somebody like that? Right? Are you going to subject your client to an agent that won't even answer the phone before there's a problem? I'm going to say, hell no, you're crazy if you do. Okay, so we just by being competent probably have a 2 to 2.5 times advantage over all the other offers. And then if we can get the client, the buyer, our customer to have a proper mindset about what is the real value. Okay. You know, Bruce, you talked about a lot of times an appraisal comes in at what the negotiated price is, correct?
Majority, yeah, definitely.
Like if there's a house listed for 550 and I paid 583, it usually comes in at 583 or 585, correct? Magically,
so far,
right?
Yeah. Let's put it this way. As much as there's all these rules for the appraisers work for the lenders. They're always going to try to come in at the number they could come in at to make the transaction work. If they can't, there's usually a real reason why they can't.
Right, but for the most part, don't the appraisers realize, don't they believe that this was an arm's length transaction, right? There was competitive bidding, somebody bid it up to here. So that's really where the market's saying it's worth, right? And if you were to go back and let's just say I wanted to open up a business, I'm going to call it a stock appraising business, right? And I'm going to go take a look at the price of Amazon 2 months ago, and you want to buy it today. And you can say, hey, you know what? This was bought 2 months ago. Here's what the value of Amazon was 2 months ago. I wouldn't pay the price it is today. That would be completely absurd, wouldn't it? But yet the real estate, because there's a transition period, there's a delay. Okay, like stock market has real transparency because it's live trading. There's no period to close. There's transparency in somebody who's making an electronic bid, an electronic sale. And real estate just has this little bit of inefficiency that is the closing time frame, and also the fact that all homes are not the same, right? Every house has some unique characteristics. But the bigger piece is when you look at comps, Mickey, you're looking at stuff that went under contract 2 months ago to 6 or 8 months ago that closed in the past 6 months. Is the market not tremendously different from 6 months ago or 8 months ago? I would say yes.
But let
Rob,
me ask you a
this is-
question, because I really, and this is the dilemma I guess I had, because I didn't think that that house was worth more than 430. It's a house that needed everything: new kitchen, new bathrooms, new walls, new floors, 2 bedrooms. It's listed as a 3-bedroom, but it's 2 because 1 bedroom had to be an 8 by 8 with no closets. So in my mind, and then when I saw what other properties in the like condition sold, they were in the high 3s, not 4s. I really thought that this agent priced it high to begin with. So offering 430, I didn't try to talk the buyer into higher, because I thought that was a good offer. What would you have done if you think, based on comps and based on the condition, how much would you offer on a house that's listed at 410?
Yes, I agree with it, because when you're showing a house and you know that it's maybe a little overpriced, people really have to like the house a whole lot. I mean, if they see that it needs upgrades and work, they're not going to overpay for it. They're just not. And it's going to be
Okay.
difficult to convince them.
Well, here's my thought. What's overpaying? Since I was the person that passed on a house I should have bought, I think that's really the buyer's
What price would you
decision.
offer on a house like that, where it needs everything? It's listed at 410. Other homes in the like condition in that town sold for 350, 370. I think I found one at 380 highest. And remember, it needs everything.
I would
What would you
present
tell the
all
client?
that. Okay, I would present all that to the buyer, and I would ask them what they really feel about the house, understanding that it's going to go for more. Are they comfortable with that? We can't put ourselves in their position. I used to tell agents that the house they go to that they think is, trash is someone else's castle. We need to know what the buyer feels. If the buyer says, I know that, but I can do this, my husband is handy, we can do this, we can do that.
Yeah, that's a good
Yes,
point.
they can do all that, but
That's a
my
good
question
point.
is still, what would you suggest? Because if I had a first-time buyer, they asked me, what do you think?
In
I'm like,
certain,
I honestly thought 430 was a good offer.
in
We
certain,
waived inspection. It has asbestos in the basement. He's gonna take care of the asbestos. We presented a higher deposit than what he's really gonna do, one of Nilai's favorites or specials. So we did a lot of things. I spoke to the agent 10 times. I don't know what else I could have done.
So Mickey, the real question, and I know that you're very committed to your clients. I also know that you don't want your clients to get ripped off. I don't think anybody on this call wants their clients to get ripped off or taken advantage of. But I think that there's a point in a transaction where it goes beyond what we think, right? And the question really would have been, in my opinion, is, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, at what point would you feel remorse by not having bid more to get this house, knowing all the comps, knowing all the things that need to be done? Where would you land? And I think a lot of times, and everybody's guilty of it because we all have emotion, we're guilty of saying, I don't think it's worth that. Go ahead.
Rob, can I take this from another angle for literally 90 seconds? I've been teaching a lot, a lot of the agents, even from Westfield, they're coming down to Tin Falls, which is great, how to do a CMA. So when we do a CMA, my agents now are listening to what I'm saying. So this might sound bizarre, but I think it hits home. So normally we take the closed sales price, right, to do comps. But here's what I'm telling agents. That closed sales comps, for the most part, 95% of them are closing above original list price. That's what you're going to base your comps on, the list price, because that closed sales price is very subjective. Rob Lazar's is willing to pay $5,000 over, but Bruce, Oliver is willing to pay $50,000 over. Those are subjective. So it's what the buyer wants, how badly he wants it. So those closed comps have to go by the original list price. So I would say to you, Rob, you really want this house? How much is it worth it to you at the max? It doesn't matter what I feel is, good or not. Those closed sales prices are subjective. They're not values of what the house are. The
And
house.
Maria, have you ever counseled one of your agents to accept an offer that was, 1-2%, 5,000, maybe even 10,000 less because you had faith that the agent would deliver, and you just had a little bit of a fogginess about somebody else's ability to perform?
Absolutely.
Or maybe there's in your market, like in mine, there are agents and agencies that are notorious for trying to beat down a transaction during the process. All those things matter. And thank you for sharing. I know, Eric, you wanted to share something as well.
Yeah, I think there's many factors involved in trying to get the prices up to where the market is today. And it could be someone, the person you're dealing with, you got to find out where they're at. For example, crypto went down 8% today. So what are we talking about? 5%, 6% on a house? I think people have to understand that we're the experts. And when we start asking them what they want to pay for a house or how they feel and all of those things, I think you're taking our expertise out of our pocket and putting it into the pockets of people who buy a house, once in a while. And it's getting steered off the road. Bottom line is, if there's 10 offers out there, and like you said, 7 of them are off base anyway, the best thing for you to do is to really guide them and tell them what you think the price of the house is going to be when they close 2-3 months from now, which is accelerating. And it's accelerating right now at a greater pace than it was over the last couple of months in this area. So I can't speak for any other area. But going back to some of the things that were said, I think people get personally involved and think that they wouldn't pay such a price. Well, they're not buying the house, number one. That's really a very bad way of going.
Yeah.
I heard Mickey say that several times and she gets upset about it. It's nothing to be really upset about. The market isn't waiting for anybody. So, I mean, I could go on and on and on about that. But right now, I take the last house that sold in the area, see how much over it went, over the assessed value. And if it's 20% over the assessed value, I think we should be 20% over the assessed value here, plus whatever the comping is based on what Maria said. But basically, you're looking, you have to be way over the pricing of everyone else to win. So if you don't want to win, keep doing that. If you want to win, you gotta just tell your client outright. If you lose your client over it, just handle it a little better next time.
Hey, Rob. Rob.
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, price is important and you got to be competitive with price, but I don't think anybody's really talking about how terms matter also. There's a lot of terms that make a difference besides, obviously big down payment, obviously waiving the inspection. But like, for example, even though I lost these offers, I still talk to my people about loading it up. Like, for example, Dumont, you have to do, every time you have to do fire, sometimes with fire and, habitability. So the last one we did, besides offer asking, which I knew wasn't going to get it, we did, I'm going to get the CO. I'll take care of it. And my buyer is going to handle any repair up to $1,000. I had an estate sale. I also throw in there, we will get rid of anything you leave behind. And my client's like, what? I'm like, look, a dumpster is $700. You get a few guys, you throw all the trash in there, any furniture they leave. Because a lot of times estate sale, or even somebody's downsized and they're like, where do we get rid of all this furniture? That could matter. I asked the listing agent, do they want to stay after we close? I talked to my people, even put in there, we're willing to rent back. I forgot the exact legal, every possible term you throw in there because it could be the littlest thing to make you stand out from somebody else.
I agree with you on the term piece. Somebody even made a comment like sometimes the best deal is the one that you walked away from. That's a true statement as well. But the decision is not really ours. The decision is our buyer's decision to make, right? And we need to be able to counsel them so that we avoid Maria and Colleen's experience of saying, I wish I would have, could have, should have, just stretched a little bit to go and do this. I want to read the beginning of this regret minimization concept here, and I want to listen to it in a different context after our conversation. When you think about things that you will regret when you're sitting in your rocking chair at age 80, they're almost always the things that you did not do. They're acts of omission. Very rarely are you going to regret something that you did that failed and didn't work or whatever. So most of the regrets that we have, and yeah, you can make a bad decision. And I think more of the bad decisions are going to be based on trying to time the market than whether or not they paid a couple of dollars more here or there on a particular house that they want to be in. And, you know, throughout this whole piece of this whole discussion we're having here, you know, Mickey, what's the value of your buyer? And let's assume that there's a family and they want to start their life in a new house and they want to start fixing it up today and not wait 6 months. There's a value to being able to have some certainty in getting that whole process started. And I think that decision is some decision that our clients need to make with our guidance, and we need to not betray them, but we need to be transparent in this market. Okay.
Well, that's my dilemmas. I really truthfully thought that was a good deal. I didn't think that going higher for that house was necessary. So I guess the problem I have is that, you know, determining what is the right, because they asked me, what do you think? And I said, you know, what is the most you're willing to pay? And maybe I didn't emphasize that enough. And when they said 430, I thought 430 for that house was a good price. So my bad judgment, I guess.
Right. But
what did it sell for? What did it sell for, Mickey?
I don't know. This just happened. So she told me it was well over my 430. So if she says well over, I assume that it's at least 20K. So maybe one for 450, 460. I don't know.
Hey, Rob.
She hasn't told me. But she did say I'm her backup. I'm her next backup. So whatever that means.
Okay. So Robert, you have a question?
Yeah. So to Mickey's point, one concept that I used was I worked backwards. I found all the comps of the houses that were in perfect condition that did not need any work. And I kind of deducted what would the cost of a kitchen be, a bathroom or any sort of renovation. And I kind of worked backwards. And to your point, to your statement that you just read, Rob, there's certain things that you just can't put a price on. So if the house had this great location, you really can't put a price on that. You know, how much more would you pay for a location? And then if the house has a great location and it needs work, you know, you just kind of work backwards. You get the comps from perfect condition houses and you just deduct what it would cost to redo a kitchen or a bathroom or install wood floors.
And I think, Robert, a lot of the things that we're talking about here are all, you know, sound fundamental conversations with the client. But ultimately, I think it needs to be, you know, Mickey, Robert, Colleen, Maria, Eric, at what price would you have regretted not bidding up to? And I would feel like I can knock the ball out of the park if I had a conversation where I said, hey, you know, Mickey, I was able to see all the offers. If I was the only one that could see all the offers, right, that were coming in, right? Because I know this agent, she's a friend of mine. She's going to tell me every offer that she has. You know, at what point would you bow out of the game? I just want to know ahead of time, like, where would you stop and say, I'm not going to match that other offer? Where would you go? Like, wouldn't somebody be like impressed if that was the case? Like, hey, this is, you know, this is my college roommate's best friend that's the listing agent. They're going to tell me exactly what the offer is. You know, by the way, how high are you going to go if I knew all the offers? Wouldn't the client think that was pretty cool, Mickey?
I guess so. They would. It's just that, like I said, in my scenario, I really thought that house.
All right, we have to get off. We have to get off what you think.
I have a question, Rob. Didn't you guys just go through a market where you had all these skills that you had to adapt, where you had to use this every offer 2 years ago? Like every house was going for a lot more money, and you were talking about buying ahead of the market because the appreciation was there. I mean, didn't you guys just go through a whole slew? Just because maybe that changed a little, to me, as a lender or just as a consumer, I would imagine there's still certain transactions where that's going to be there. I would think it would be a lot of those same conversations because the appreciation is still there. And if somebody wants a house, you're going to have to fight. I mean, you guys dealt with that all the time.
So, and Mickey, I want to go back to like where you're at, okay? Because you're internalizing it, and you know I love you, Mickey, right? I care about you a lot, and I want to help you grow, but I think it's not your decision. Okay, it's your decision to give them the information, and then let them make the decision. And I would say to them, Mickey, I'm not saying that I do, but if there were a scenario where I knew exactly what the other offers were, I want you to think about where would you stop if you knew there was an offer $1,000 more? Like, what's the breaking point, right? And wherever they land on what that number would be, that they would go $1,000 above this offer, then I would say that's the offer we need to make in this environment.
Okay, Rob.
Yeah,
I think what we need to do is start thinking about real estate like art. In art, a painting is worth what somebody is willing to pay for it, and that's how the market is set in art. It's how much somebody wants it and what they're willing to pay for it, and it's a very skewed market. Difficult to figure out, and I think that's what we're looking at. You know, the similarities to our real estate market now are very close.
I mean, Colleen, it's obvious. It's obvious we've tapped into some strong emotion here, right?
Exactly.
And we're supposed to be less emotional in the process. Would you not agree? As a manager for many years, like we shouldn't be like spun around by emotion, but yet I see that there's a lot of emotion on this conversation. And I think if we had a process that was less emotion, right? And we need to find a way to get to the point where if somebody knew, Colleen, if somebody knew that there was another offer for 577 and one for 580, and they could have that property for 581, I think they would be like, yeah, wow, there are two other offers. I feel comfortable about it at 581. Now, why do we need to have the transparency of what those two offers are for them to be comfortable in the market that we're in? Because we all know that there's a strong likelihood that there's going to be multiple offers in this situation. And does the fact that there were two other offers mean that it's worth more? I don't think so.
That's why I said those closed prices that we look at as comps are subjective, Rob. Because one buyer is willing to pay one price more than the other.
I agree, Maria.
So Mickey.
Yeah, I agree as well.
Mickey, you're putting up two gates for your transactions, which is making you frustrated. Okay, there's the gate at which your client will pay, and then there's the Mickey Littman, I feel it's a reasonable deal gate. And I think that
I guess going forward, I get you. Going forward, I'm just not even going to look at what my opinion is. I'm just going to say, what is the most that you're willing to pay with no regrets if you lose it?
Right. If you go to them and say, Mickey, here's where the market is, you know, there might be 10, 15, 40 offers on this property. You know, at what point would you come back to me and say, if I knew that that was selling for this, I would have bid up to that point? I think that would be the conversation that I want people to try. And then next week, I want to hear if that moved the needle.
Yep, I've done that before in the last year when the market was super crazy. I just didn't think that they were going that high now in the current interest rate market. And
Rob, I'm sorry, Mickey.
It's okay.
Rob, before we end, you promised me, and it has to do with what we're talking about today, what I was able to accomplish with NAR, with RPR for our company. I sent you an email. If you could open it up and share it, please.
Why don't you talk about it while I'm opening it up?
So guys, I don't know how much I don't know if anyone on this call uses RPR. I find RPR to be outstanding to do your comps with, okay, your CMAs, only because one of the reasons is that RPR also has off-market closings. The last thing, and I know that it's happened before, where an agent goes to a property, a home, meets a seller, and the seller says, oh, what about 123 Main Street down the road? The agent is caught off guard because it's not on the MLS. So RPR has not only the MLS closings, but also closings that are off market. I was able, because of the size of our company, to get personal training directly from RPR on how to do a CMA. And that is for both New Jersey and Florida. There are limited Zoom seats. So it is April 5th, 11 to 12. I don't know.
Century 21.
You want to mute
I'm sorry,
everybody?
Century 21 what?
Unmute yourself, Maria.
Okay, so let me say again. So RPR is doing a personal training just for our company in New Jersey and Florida. And please look out for the invite. They're going out this weekend. It'll be repetitive. There will be a registration. It's silly not to take it. You really should. I know it's coming up soon, April 5th, 11 to 12. Take an hour out and you will see that this is going to open up your world when it comes to doing CMAs.
I love RPR. Thanks, Maria.
It is. And like I said, it has off-market properties that have closed. And a lot of distressed properties that have closed, things that are not on our MLS, and it's incredible. It really is.
And lastly is, I think calling 10 to 1 tomorrow. There will be an update on some activities when I'm down in Florida. Second is the VIP card video was delayed in being posted. It's now posted. It has the instructions. It's on the Abundance in Real Estate channel. I think that's a low-hanging fruit. It's a great conversation starter. It's a great way to go knock on somebody, knock on your past client's door in your sphere and give them something of value. It's also a great way to engage, local merchants that can promote you by giving them something of value. And I'm trying to coordinate Glenn changing around an appointment for a peer-to-peer on Monday to go over how he's exploiting video to grow his business, which he's doing a fantastic job on. So I know we're like 9 minutes over. I think this was a great emotional conversation. And if you look on the video when it's posted, I'm going to put some notes here. That might be something we can reflect back on to help our clients make the right decisions for them so that we can be obsessively customer focused and help them get houses. Because if we're a realtor, our job is to get people in houses. And if we're not able to get that mission accomplished, we need to make sure that we're not part of the roadblock and that our opinion is not influencing what a customer is going to do. If Mickey's client was putting 5 or 10% down, they would have the appraisal as a backstop to make sure that there was a reasonable value should that offer get accepted. Anyway, I hope this is really helpful. I hope you can attend on the 5th. Look forward to seeing you on the peer-to-peer on Monday. I'm excited to see what techniques Glenn's using to build his business around video. Have a great weekend, everybody.